Okay, thank you very much. After that experience, I came back to Australia and then went down the academic road. So I have a degree in anthropology and also a postgraduate degree in business. During that experience, I became very interested in negotiation. And my objective today is that you all walk out of this room with more knowledge about China than you came in. I've called my presentation Lure the Tiger Down the Mountain. Who is the tiger? The tiger is you. What is the mountain? The mountain is your comfort zone. Because with China, with negotiating with Chinese people, you're always being lured out of your comfort zone. So how do you keep in your comfort zone? You understand what's going on. Now, Chinese people have the reputation of being very good negotiators or very comfortable with negotiation. Okay. Why is this? For a very long time, Chinese people have been playing games of strategy. Mahjong, backgammon, chess. All of these games are about strategic moves, and that's what negotiation is about, as opposed to Western culture, games of contact, football, soccer, boxing. Anywhere you go in China, any city you go, you can see this scene. If we're in China now, if we're in Shanghai, for example, big international city, somewhere outside, around the corner, there would be a market. And people would be negotiating. So Chinese people have a lot of practice at this from a very young age. Most Chinese people will have been negotiating from about the age of 5. They go to the market, they negotiate for the fruit, for the meat, for their mother or their father. So they've had a lot of practice at this. There's a saying in China, everything is negotiable. Okay. Now, the other reason that Chinese people are very comfortable at negotiating, I'm sure that you've all heard of The Art of War. Maybe some of you have read The Art of War. Now, I first discovered The Art of War, the 36 strategies, about 6 years ago. And someone in Shanghai said to me, Leonie, learn these strategies intimately, because this is how this culture thinks. I came back to Australia and I said to my staff, have you heard of the 36 strategies? They all had their favourite strategy. It is so fundamental in the culture. So what I realised was that The Art of War it's very difficult to read because it gives examples of things that are thousands of years ago. What relevance is that to today's business? So I took each strategy and provided a modern-day business example because this is very relevant to how you negotiate. And for today's presentation, I've chosen 6 of those strategies, which I believe will help you with your negotiations. Now, today, I'm not talking about the soft and fluffy stuff about doing business with China because it isn't soft and fluffy. All right, strategy 4. Wait leisurely for an exhausted enemy. What does that mean? All right, you are going to China to do a negotiation. And let's say you go to China on a Thursday. And your contact kindly picks you up from the airport. You chat in the car. And the person says to you, when are you leaving China? And you innocently say, my flight is leaving Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, as you would. Because what is Western culture trained to do? We're trained to be clear. When we're asked a question, we answer it. So what have you done? You've just given the time and place for battle. When is the battle? The battle is Monday night. Because you will be exhausted before you get on that plane Tuesday morning. Something else will be thrown up at you. Okay, so you've given them the exact time to throw something up. You are the visitor in the country. So what do? Be a little vague. I haven't exactly confirmed my flight yet. All right? So, strategy 4, wait leisurely for an exhausted enemy. Strategy 6, make a noise in the east and attack in the west. What does that mean? All right, this is about taking you away from your initial objective in a meeting. Example, I get these made in China. I'm not happy about the price. So I go to China and I go to the factory and I talk to the person that I normally talk to. We sit down, we start talking about the price. And then we're talking about the colour, the size. And I walk out of that meeting after half an hour and I've gone out the door and hang on, I went in about the price. What happened? What happened to me? I was taken away, make a noise in the east and attack in the west. So what do you need to do? You need to keep the Chinese on track, all right? Because remember, you are dealing with very good negotiators and very good business people and very smart people, okay? Now, this is not about turning you all Chinese. This is about understanding how the other side thinks. All right. Now, the discussion about trust, connection. This is a fundamental concept in Chinese business culture. Guanxi is your social capital within your network. What is Guanxi? Guanxi is the closest translation, and actually there is no translation in English, but the closest translation is connection, networking. All right. So you need to be building this Guanxi, to build this trust, because I don't know of any Chinese business person who has done business with someone who they haven't had this connection with or don't have this connection with. In Australia, we can do business with a complete stranger. Yes, we have connections, but Guanxi is how China operates. In Australia, we say location, location. In China, connection, connection. China is one big connection. Now, how do you build connections? You acknowledge things like festivals. You understand what gifts to take. Concepts like friends before business. You develop the friendship before the business, because if you don't have the friendship, the business won't be there anyway. So you're always developing Guanxi, which brings me to the next strategy. Strategy 10, hide your dagger behind a smile. What does that mean? All right, I go to present to some potential Chinese investors. Let's say we've got 5 meetings in China. And every one of those meetings seems so positive. They all say, yes, 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 fantastic. So I come back and I'm so happy because everyone wants to invest in my company. But the truth of the matter is, it might be only one of those 5 meetings, those 5 companies that actually want to invest. Now, this is not, they're not lying to you. This is actually about what I said before, developing the guanxi. Because if I'm Chinese and I say no to you, that means that I have disrupted the guanxi. It means that I will not have a connection with you. So by saying yes, we keep that connection going. I have the luxury of speaking Mandarin. And when I go to Shanghai, I go on the subway and I can sit there and talk to someone, just say, a man, he gives me his business card, I give him my business card. We are always developing guanxi. Now, if I was sitting on a train in Australia and some guy came up and gave me his business card, I'd think, what's this about? Okay, in China, it's perfectly normal. You're always developing this relationship. Now, how do you know if someone is really interested in what you've got? Most of the time, if people talk a lot to you, come up and chat, I could probably predict that they're not that interested. If they sit there and they're writing and they're a bit more silent and thinking, they're probably interested. Now, that's a generalisation because the more that you get to know this, the more you will understand. Okay, which brings me to strategy 15. Lure the tiger down the mountain. The mountain is your comfort zone. And this is all about where you negotiate. So, the best place to negotiate is your own country. Best case scenario, your own country, Australia. Second best scenario is a midpoint, neutral ground. You know, Hong Kong, Singapore, somewhere like that, meet in the middle. Third best is the place that you always go to in China. So, for example, if you always go to Shanghai, you make sure that because you've got to know that city, you know the hotel, you know the restaurants, you know the streets. So you can negotiate in the place that you know in China. The worst case scenario is in a Chinese city that you've never been to. So what will Chinese negotiators do? We'll pay your airfare, we'll pay your hotel, let's go to Beijing and negotiate. Then you're right out of your comfort zone. Okay, strategy 30, exchange the role of guest for that of host. All right, who is the guest and who is the host? This happens with interpretation. I see this a lot. All right, you have some investors coming to Australia to see you. And they call up and they say, don't worry about an interpreter, you can use ours. And you think, phew, one thing I don't have to do, one extra thing I don't have to pay for, let them handle that. That is a really bad move because what will happen is if you use their interpreter, you've actually then given them the role of host. Because what will happen is the guest, who is the interpreter, will move into the host. And you will lose control of what's going on. Now, what do you do if someone calls up and says, you can use my interpreter? What you do is you don't comment. You don't say, no, that's okay, we've got our own. Okay. You don't say thanks very much, you just don't comment. And then you provide your own. Now, your interpreter here, when you contract an interpreter, and if you don't use my business, please, you must be very clear with the company that you use. They must not give their business card to that group. For example, if one of my staff do an interpretation job, they are told they must never give their business card to your potential joint venture partners. because that interpreter is working for you. They are not there to advertise my business to Chinese people. So they must be your eyes, your ears, and your mouth. That is it. They do not have any other control over what you do. And they must not change what you say. And also for you, it's not like, hey, can you, shift that, convince the other side a bit. No, they are just an interpreter, all right? So interpretation is a very common place where someone can move from guest to host. Strategy 36, if all else fails, retreat. Okay, there's 3 ways of retreating. The first one is you surrender. The second is you negotiate for peace. The third is you run away. All right, if you surrender, got my fingers burnt in China, don't want to go there again, you won't go there again. Second way, negotiate for peace. Oh, China wasn't really that good. Don't really think I want to go there again. You won't. Run away. Don't tell anyone. You can go back then. You've left the door open to go back. Because I've had my business now since 1998, and there's a lot of people that come to us and say, Leonie, we were in China 5 years ago, and it didn't really work, but we're going back again now. They're the ones that just ran away. You leave the doors open. Why do Chinese people just not contact you? They're just running away. They're leaving that door open. All right. I like to link language a lot with culture because language is how our brain is wired. What is the word for negotiation in Chinese? Talk, judge. Tan pan, talk, judge. So the point here is that wherever you are inside a negotiation, you are always being judged. The difference in Australia is we negotiate in the boardroom. Then outside it's a bit different. And then in the restaurant, we don't have to worry. But in China, there are no walls, all right? So inside the office, socialising, at the banquet, you are always being judged. And what are you being judged on? You are being judged. Can they trust you? Can you develop this thing called guanxi? Can you handle this relationship? So you don't ever let your guard down. You're always being judged. What do you need to do? You need to research. Now, especially with China, the reason is, okay, who are you negotiating with? Now, there's a lot of information there on the wonderful thing called the internet. So the point is with China, if you are negotiating with someone who is in their 60s as opposed to someone who is in their 30s, that 65-year-old or 60-year-old will have come through the Cultural Revolution, which was from 1966 to 1977. They have a very different view of the world compared to a 30-year-old. So you need to know their background, where they've worked before, what are their interests. And if Chinese people contact you about your company, guaranteed they've really done the work on you, they will know everything about you by the time they get here. So research is really important. Hierarchy in negotiation. The difference between Australian culture and Chinese culture is we operate in an egalitarian way, whereas Chinese operate in a very hierarchical way. What I mean is that egalitarian, the boss is called the first name, the lecturer is called their first name, the teacher is called their first name. Now, hierarchy in Chinese culture is very important because it determines how you hand your business card. It determines where you sit at the table. It determines how you communicate. It determines how you say hello. Ni hao, compared to Nin Hao, which is to someone of higher authority to you. So understanding where people sit is very important so that you then are able to communicate with them in a culturally appropriate way. The issue of face. Face and Guanxi fold into all of these 36 strategies. Face. Now you may say, well, we have face in Australia. We get embarrassed. We do. But it's face in Australia is how I see myself. Face in China is how others see me. How do others view me? What are they looking at? All right, so it's all about how your group sees you, you know, how you are inside the company. Now, because of face, one of the reasons that we often ask, you know, do you understand? Yes, but we know they don't. Are you clear about that? Yes, but we know they don't. I was like, oh, I wish people would say, okay, the issue of face. A Chinese person will not say they don't understand in front of their group because it causes loss of face. So you have to find a different way of communicating. By simply using the direct form of communication that we use in Australia will not work. So you need to construct your questions in a more roundabout way that don't require a yes-no answer. Now, what is a no? What is a no in China? I'll give you an example. Under the current circumstance, we would like to discuss this matter when the opportunity arises. That is not a yes. That is a gentle rejection. All right, so you need to... We have these sayings in Australia, and if you look at how people say things, take everything on face value. Well, don't do that in China. All right? And getting back to sayings with the 36 strategies, people ask me, where did Chinese people learn these? Well, where did you learn don't count your chickens before they hatch? Don't cry over spilt milk. I don't know. I didn't learn it at school. Somewhere I learnt that. So where do you learn wait leisurely if you're exhausted enemy? I don't know. It's just in the culture. It's fundamental in the culture. Okay, when things get sticky in a negotiation, what happens? What do Chinese people do? They say, let's go out and eat. Let's go and eat. Now remember, talk, judge, because when you go out and eat, you are still being judged. So the let's go out and eat doesn't mean, oh, we can have a rest for a while. We say things in meetings and we use that as a space to say things. We have sayings, you know, say things to my face, be clear about things. All right, so we have to think about this in a very different way. Now, how can we see how Chinese negotiate? Or, in a sense, this is almost like a wrap-up of how I see negotiation. If we look at a chess match, a chessboard, who is the most important piece on the chessboard? Who is the piece that's left to last? The king. How much does the king move? Hardly at all. The king doesn't move hardly at all. All the other pieces move and they use up their energy. So what happens in negotiation? All of a sudden you're at the banquet and someone walks in that you've never seen before. Uh-oh. That's the important person. There's the king. But the king hasn't used their energy, whereas you have. So you have to be aware that when you're in a negotiation, you may not have met everybody. Without proper guidance, it's hard to stand out from the crowd. How do you stand out from the crowd? It's actually not really about your product anymore, all right? What it's about is understanding the culture, because if you don't have the trust and the connection, the guanxi, the friendship, the deal doesn't happen. So the way that you stand out from the crowd is to understand Chinese culture. Your product is no longer your competitive edge. Think of the culture, understanding the culture as your competitive edge. Now, why do we need to understand Chinese culture? Well, you know, in this whole conference, there's been a lot of talk about China in every conference we go to. Every newspaper we pick up now, it's about China. There's something about China. When I go to Shanghai in the South Morning China Post, I may read about Australia once a week. All right? We are not the focus of China. China is our focus. We are a piece in China's pie. Every other country in the world wants a piece of China, wants to do business with China. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is that this is not the emergence of China. China was the centre of the world a long time ago. China just had a break for a while. All right? China knows how to be the centre of the world because it was the centre of the world a long time ago. So this kind of thing for China is very familiar. And the other thing I'd like to talk about in the mining sector is that, in my opinion, the only familiar product that China really understand is mining. Because they were here a long time ago with their pans and their long ponytails. They understand what comes out of the ground. They've just come back in a different form. All right? Chinese people don't fully understand the wine culture, some of our export products, but they do understand what comes out of the ground because they were here a long time ago. So I think that is a huge advantage for the mining and resources sector because it is familiar. Okay, this is what we do: cultural awareness workshops, interpretation services, Mandarin language tuition, provide assistance with delegations and translation services. And we specialise in the mining and resources sector. I'll leave you with one Chinese phrase. 谢谢你们. I've said thank you to you for listening to my presentation. There is our website. So thank you very much.